Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Thank you for those that watched yesterday's video and complimented me on my singing voice. I wasn't really expecting that, and I just wanted to say thank you for that. I'm a little flattered. I want to talk today about America. Is it time for a breakup? I don't think that this comes from an unpatriotic standpoint. I don't think that people that are pushing for secession or a breakup of the United States are unpatriotic necessarily. And there have been many, many movements, well, since the last time it happened, 150 years ago or so, that, or more than that now, that have popped up from sometimes conservative states, sometimes from liberal states, that are fed up with the current state of affairs of this nation and have made threats to part ways and go elsewhere or establish their own government or whatever. We are hearing more of that lately, and you all are aware of that over the past weeks and months. It seems to be a growing conversation of civil war and secession and things of that nature. Here in Missouri, I reported a week or so ago that in Missouri they had passed in the Missouri House what is called the Second Amendment Preservation Act, which essentially nullifies most federal gun laws and says that if a agent of the state, an officer, prosecutor, or judge violates someone's Second Amendment rights, they can be liable to pay that person up to, a minimum of $50,000. That bill is now passed in the Senate. Now, the last time that this was just a couple of days ago. There's a slight variation between the two. So they're either going to have to hash out a completely new bill or agree to combine these two bills. It's very slightly different. So I don't think there's going to be a problem on that. I actually read both of them. The Senate bill is a little bit tougher. It's got a little bit more teeth to it. Not extremely different, though. And my opinion is, if that bill gets passed and established into law, it will probably be the most anti-federal government bill that any state has passed since articles of succession were passed by states, back in the 1860s. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that is my opinion. Now, of course, there's a lot of people, and they're not wrong, that think that, well, it doesn't matter because this bill means nothing because of the supremacy clause that the Supreme Court has ruled that no state can nullify a federal law, that the federal laws have supremacy over state laws. Of course, the flip side to that argument is that ruling is unconstitutional because the 10th Amendment says that, anything that's not specific in the Constitution is powers, given to the state and to the people. So I do believe, my gut tells me, is that this whole supremacy thing, it's just one court ruling, and that it could be changed, or, some states, if they want to be hard-nosed enough about it, they can say, well, we don't care. We're an independent state. And the reason why I think that that's a possibility is I know for a fact that there are a couple that I've talked to, state reps here in Missouri, and I cannot speak for all of them, but I know that there are a couple that the reason why that they've pushed for this is not just to protect Second Amendment rights, is basically to draw a line in the sand to push the federal government to say, listen, you're either going to acknowledge this or we're going to say goodbye, that there's going to be a problem. It's almost like they're pushing a situation to happen because, the news media wants to paint a different picture, and we all know that. But many of these states, not just the regular average people out in the, like myself, but even officials within the states are completely and absolutely fed up on a federal level. Not just with the Democrats, but they're just absolutely fed up. And we're seeing movements happen that would quite very well possibly push us into some kind of secession of states, formation of a separate government, a secondary government that kind of lives in exile, and we could also find ourselves at some point in a physical confrontation. Texas has been doing the same thing. Now, everybody knows Texas is constantly wanting to secede. They wanted to secede the moment they probably joined the Union, and have had regrets ever since then. But it does seem to be that the Texas independence movement that's been around for years is starting to gain some momentum within the state. A state legislature there has proposed or has filed a bill to bring it to a vote of the people. I believe this fall, in fact, if the bill passes, that it would be on the ballot, statewide ballot, to secede. Would that pass? I don't know. I mean, I think if there was enough, if they were able to promote it enough, get enough money behind it to educate the people of what it actually would mean, I think that there would be enough people in Texas possibly to pass a bill such as that. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about in this video is the legality of doing that. A lot of experts say that it's actually illegal for any state to secede, including Texas. That once Texas joined the Union again, that they lost that right to secede. And there's definitely court cases and stuff to indicate that. But here's the argument. Of course, any government says that no people can secede. Has there ever been a government on this face of this planet that said, well, a certain, anyone that just wants to opt out of being a citizen and kind of form their own government, well, that's totally legal. Of course, no government does that. Do you think that it was legal for our founding fathers to secede from the, King of England? I mean, that's what they did. That's what the Declaration of Independence was. That's what the Revolutionary War fought for. It wasn't just a revolutionary war, and in fact, it technically wasn't, because they weren't trying to change the government. They were trying to break away from the government and form their own. It was a civil war. In fact, it was, very much the same type of war that we saw in the South, between the North and the South, where, a group of people within a government decided that they were going to break away from said government and form their own. The Declaration of Independence says that when governments kind of stray away from protecting these rights, that it is the right and the duty of the people to establish their own. So our own Declaration of Independence basically establishes that it's a natural human right for people to break away from a corrupt and evil government and form their own. So, in other words, secession is always illegal. Period. It's always illegal. Okay? Revolutions are illegal. Every government on this planet would argue that to revolt against the government or to try to break away and establish a new government, it's illegal, right? But that's the whole point of doing it. If a government says that it's illegal, if a government tries to physically restrain you from breaking away, then in that act alone, they are establishing reasons to break away from that government. So if the federal government says, oh, no, Missouri, Texas, whoever, you cannot secede from here and form your own government. You can't do that. That in itself becomes a reason, because these states came into this union through voluntary means. And to be honest, it should be able to walk away from this union by voluntary means. And if the government is by force saying that you are no longer allowed to walk away, then they have violated that union to begin with, and they violated those human rights and natural rights to just in stating that. So while some of you may want to argue that secession isn't legal, it's never legal, but it's done. It's been done throughout history, and sometimes with success and sometimes with not success. But most always is there some type of war that erupts because of it. Are we heading to that day here in the United States? I don't know, but I can say that we've probably closer to it right now than we have been since the last one. And if the things that are happening on a federal level continue to worsen in the way that they have over the past month or so, or just really a few weeks since the changing of powers, I could see where more and more people would kind of rear up and be willing to stand up and to fight against the government for secession. Here in Missouri, I'm telling you, people here are quite fed up. They're quite rebellious in nature anyways when it comes to the federal government. A lot of the old-timers still refer to anyone that works for the federal government a revenuer. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up on your own. I know that many people in rural Texas and all over the rural South and the Midwest are quite fed up. And so we are living in a time that it is, I believe, quite possible to see people kind of break away from the government. I think the only thing, I don't think that there's a problem with the initiation of that, the initiating the whatever, bills, laws. It's the follow through. Do people have enough grit? Do they have enough of the guts that it needs to stick with it when that threat comes from the federal government? When they come down with that heavy hand and say, listen, Missouri, if you don't back away from this, we're cutting all your funding. We're going to do all these things bad to you if you don't stop, pushing this Second Amendment Preservation Act. Will Missouri buck up and say, do whatever you want to do, but we're not backing away from this? There are already counties, Newton County, which I'm very familiar with Newton County. In my opinion, maybe the most rebellious county there is in the state of Missouri. It's extremely libertarian, conservative libertarian. The county sheriff there and the county has passed a law stating that it will be a criminal act for any federal agent to conduct, arrests within their county without the authority and the authorization of the county sheriff. So if the ATF wants to, arrest someone or do a raid, or the DEA or anything like that, and they are not under the authorization of the sheriff, then they can be arrested by the sheriff. We are seeing more and more of this. Like I said, in Texas, it's starting to pick up speed. There's more and more people jumping on board with this idea of breaking away from the Union. Of course, the globalist community is going to fight against this. They're not going to stand for this. So it will definitely be, if these states hold true and they don't back down and they don't lose their spine in this, it would definitely, in my opinion, lead to a conflict, a physical, violent conflict. And I think the only thing, like I said, the only thing that remains to be seen is, are these people in power, in leadership, and within these states, do they have what it takes to follow through with that? Because I think there's a lot of people that would support it. It's a scary thing, because what if you secede and the government that takes its place is worse than what you already have? That's always a possibility. But I would love to find out if there are regular people, especially out here in the rural countryside, or just regular working schmoes that, whether liberal or Democrat, or Republican, are really happy and satisfied with the overall job of the federal government. And I would say that most of them, at least according to polls, are not satisfied with it. And I'm not talking about approval ratings of the president, past or current. I'm just talking about the overall job of the federal government. Most people are unsatisfied with it. How many of those people are willing to take it to the next level is the question. But I do think in certain states, and it appears to be right now, and I know I favor Missouri, but I think Missouri is kind of ahead of the game on this one from Texas. But Texas is certainly building up steam. The bills that passed in the Missouri House and Senate passed overwhelmingly. But of course, Missouri House and Senate is overwhelmingly controlled by conservatives. And I've not seen any word yet on whether the governor, who is a conservative, will pass it or sign it into law. But I would say that if he doesn't, he's a lame duck kind of guy. I can't imagine him ever being reelected to anything in this state if he does not sign this bill that's been passed overwhelmingly by both houses. What will it mean? It's certainly going to be a legal fight if this bill passes. It gets signed into law. But it does state that it nullifies any unconstitutional federal laws. It doesn't list any specifically, but it says that it nullifies any constitutional, any federal unconstitutional laws. And basically, Missouri state law is what we go by. And if that is true, then things like a lot of very draconian gun laws, background check laws, and machine gun laws, and things like that are no longer going to apply in Missouri. And I cannot see the federal government just sitting by and allowing that to happen. So regardless, there's certainly going to be a legal fight happen if this bill gets signed into law, and it could very well spark a physical, violent conflict. What are your thoughts? Because I've searched my heart, I've searched my mind on this one, and what my opinion is on the likelihood that over the next few years, America could be in an actual physical conflict of a civil war. I'm on the fence on. I cannot say whether I would believe that it's going to happen or not. I think there's a stronger likelihood than there ever has been, but I'm just not convinced yet that there are enough people that's truly willing to take it to that level. My gut kind of tells me that they're probably going to push it as far as they can, and then when it looks like that the only other option is war, people will start backing down from that. I could be wrong, and a part of me hopes that I'm wrong. But let me know what your opinions are of this, because certainly if America found itself in an actual civil war again, it would change the rules of a lot of things, and it would affect everyone immensely in many different ways. So let me know what your opinions are, because like I said, there's definitely more talk about it. Some of you had asked yesterday in the video about the sustainability of livestock or just any kind of farm animals, and raising the food for them, growing the food for them if you were cut off. And so I'm going to cover that in my Patreon video today. So if you're interested in finding out my opinions on that and some ideas, you can go over to Patreon, and only for $1 a month you can watch the videos that I post over there. All right, folks, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.